Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this beaded Celtic knot macrame necklace, and it looks like this. So in this one I've used some sparkly rondelles here in purple colour, and I just used a white cord, and the whole thing is one piece, so this focal part is connected to the chains going up the side, and I've just attached my clasps here. So that's what I'm going to teach you today in the necklace form here. You can also use this technique to make earrings, and these are some that I've made before. So obviously different colours, but on these I've used rounds, 3mm round hematite gemstones there. So you can either use either rondelles, they'll give a nice sparkly tone to it, or small rounds like these ones. So if you want to learn how to make these, then keep watching. So these are the things that I'll be using. Now first here I have the cord, and I'm using an S-lon. It's a 0.4mm in thickness, and I'm just using a white colour. And then you just have to make sure that whatever cord you're using will go through the beads that you're using as well. And the ones that I'm using are these here. They're 4x3mm glass rondelles in a purple colour, and they're faceted as well, so they'll look really nice and give a lot of sparkle to the piece. But in the earrings that I showed you in the intro, I used rounds, and these are 3mm rounds, so you can use that as well. It all depends on the look that you want. And then finally I just have my findings up here that's going to help me finish off the piece. I have my little kumihimo ends there, they're 5mm in diameter, and then jump rings, lobster claw clasp and extender chain. So let's get it all together and let's get started. So once we have our things ready, we then need to cut a cord, and what I have here is two lengths of my S-lon. One is a bit longer than the other one because it's going to get used more as we're making more knots with that one. So the short one needs to be 3.5 meters long, and the long one needs to be 4.5 meters long. Now it seems like quite a lot to work with, and it is long lengths, but we need that long lengths because we're both using these lengths to make the centerpiece of the necklace, but then also up the sides to then reach the clasp. So we're only using these lengths throughout the whole piece. So what we need to do is take one cord at a time here, and I'm just starting with my short length first, and we need to put the ends together because we need to find the middle of this. So go all the way down to the ends, put them together evenly, like that, and then as we go all the way up to the other end again, where we have our loop there, that's then the middle of it. So what we need to do now is basically measure out a little bit from the middle. So keep hold of that, and then we need to measure, this is the short length like I said, from this we need to measure 25 centimeters. So just take it from the middle there and 25 centimeters out to one side, and then this is the point you want to hold on to. So you're going to have one side here from this point that's longer than the other one. So I'm just going to put this to the side, pin it in, just so it's out of the way and secure. And then for my longest length of cord, we need to do the same thing. So find the middle by putting the two ends together here, evenly like this. And then all the way up the other end is where we have the middle of it, just like this. So keep hold of that. And again, we need to measure out a little while to one side here. So in this case, for the long one, what we need to do is measure 75 centimeters. So from the middle point there, measure out to one side, 75 centimeters, and then this is the point you want to hold on to. Again, I'm going to pin that in so I know the reference point of where I need to start. I'm just using my T-pins here. I'm going to be working with them throughout because they're really handy. It's going to make it a lot easier to work with. Pin it into the board to then have your work secure in place while you're working with it. So there we now have the two cords ready. Both of them, where from this point now where I have my pin and pinned it to the board, we have one side that's longer and then one that's shorter. So we need to keep hold of this, and then all we need to do is have these two reference points, put them together, making sure that the two longer sides are going towards the same direction and the two shorter lengths are going towards the opposite direction, so the same way. So just like this, so we now know this is our starting point, so we can then make a regular overhand knot just to keep them together and know where we're going to start from. This is just temporary. I'm just going to gently tighten it. You don't have to make it too tight. Just like this. And then I'm just going to do another one about 5 to 10 centimeters further up, just so we can then use that to pin into the board once we start working with it. Just makes it a little bit easier to keep it steady while we're doing our work. So like this, but this knot is where the starting point is, so for reference. Now all this measuring might have seemed a little bit complicated, but the only reason that we're doing it is because I want to make sure that it's 1 or 2 continuous lengths of cord that I'm using, both for the centerpiece, so for the knot we're going to be making there for the necklace, and also the pieces going up the side of your neck to go towards the back and the clasp. That's the only reason why I'm doing this, so we make sure that we're using basically the middle part of these cords to create that knot with. But if you're wanting to make the earrings instead, you don't have to worry so much about the measurements like this. For this, what you need to do is have the holding cord throughout the piece be 50 centimeters long, and then the working cord in this case is 1.5 meters long. So that's what's going to end up making the knot here, and just the little ends up top. And then you just want to start towards one end of it, leaving a bit of extra cord just to work with at the end there. So that's what you need to do if you want to make the earrings. So now that we have the cords ready, what I'm going to do to start making our piece is pin this to my board, just so it's nice and secure to work with. So I'm just going to take my T-pins, use that knot furthest out that I made, just as a point of kind of a stopping knot. Again, that's temporary as well. We'll just use that to be able to pin it in my board, and then one against the other knot. So you're basically almost separating the knot cords out like that. But then that's just to place it on the board. Then what we need to work with are the lengths down here, so the long lengths left. So the shorter ones are the ones you want to leave towards the top here. So the knot that we're going to be using to make this Celtic knot is the vertical lark's head knot, and we're just going to be adding beads throughout as we go. And then as for your cords here, the working cords that we have down here, so the long lengths, one is a shorter one than the other one. That's the one that's going to be the holding cord throughout your piece, so throughout the whole knot. And the other one is going to be your working cord. Now I've just made sure that my working cord is towards my right side here. So I'm going to be using my right hand to make my knots with. But obviously that's up to you in what direction you want to go. So if you're a bit unfamiliar with basic macrame knots, I do have a tutorial that might be helpful, so I'm going to put a link in the description box below to that video, so you can have a look at that if you need to. So I'll take that long length, and then what we need to do is bring that over the other one, and then back around and through the loop, so through the loop that it made itself, the same cord, get it all the way through, so you get what looks like this. So you kind of have a little reverse 6 here, looping around the holding cord. Just going to bring it up. I'm not going to bring it all the way up to the knot, because that can make the knot a little bit difficult to undo. But then just leave it there, because then the second half of it is what's going to tighten it in place. So we just went over. Now we need to go under the holding cord, around and through. So again, you get the same look. So it's a reverse 6, but it's just looping around the holding cord in the opposite direction. So just tighten the first part, and then when you tighten the second here, that's when you get your first full knot. And then it's nice and secure just where you left it. So that is how you make one full vertical lark's head knot right there. So what I'm going to do now is make another one, because I just like to have 2 to start out with before I start adding in my beads. There's just a little bit more there for us to use later on as well. So go over first to get your reverse 6. Bring it all the way up under the previous one that you made, and then go under, pull your cord all the way through, and then tighten that. So that's now 2 full knots there. So at this point I want to start adding in my beads, and this is where I'm using the rondelles or the rounds if that's what you're using. So take that, and then on your holding cord is where you need to put it on. So get all the way to the end, put it on your cord there, and let it drop all the way up below your knots like this. And then we need to do the same knot again, but we're just doing it below the bead there, so it's caging in the bead. So we bring the working cord over the holding cord, around and through the loop, just like this. And then when you tighten this one, it needs to sit right below that bead. So that's one half of it. Now we need to go under, around and all the way through, and tighten that. So that's your full knot there again, and that bead is now completely caged in. So we now need to do this again. So get another bead, add it onto your holding cord, let it drop all the way down, and use your working cord to cage that in with the same knot. So over, around and through, like that, and then under, around and through. and then pull tight, and then that's your second bead and your next knot in place. So what we need to do now is continue doing this. So putting a bead on at a time, caging that in, putting another bead on, cage that in with our knots, with the working cord there. And you need to keep doing that just in a long row, because then we'll shape it afterwards. But what we need to end up with having 21 beads in total, and then I'll show you what we do next. So I've now done all my 21 beads here and caged them in with our knots. So what we can do now is take it off the board, and then we need to start shaping this. So basically we want to start getting this into a teardrop shape, so bring the ends together roughly. But then also, because we have 21, what we need is 22 beads, but the last one we need to not cage in just yet. So what I'm going to do is put one bead on the holding cord again, just like the other times, and then just have it right down below there, just so it's loose. We haven't attached it yet. And then we need to shape it. So just keep hold of that, make sure the bead doesn't come off your cord while you're working with it. So what we need to do is bring this around and get it into the right shape. It's going to be the first loop on the Celtic knot that we're going to make. So like this, and what we need to do is have this last bead still sit on the same side, so just before it meets itself basically further down. And we need to have 2 beads on the other side of this cord. So this holding cord needs to come across in between the second and the third bead that we started out with there. And then to fasten this in place so it'll stay like this loop that we made, what we need to do is I'm going to pick it up because it's a little bit easier to handle like this. It's going to be a bit fiddly because obviously it's still loose. That's what we're trying to connect now. So the holding cord where we added the beads on, then needs to come above, further down here. So further down the beginning where we added the beads. And the working cord, that's here, we need to have that coming behind. So basically we're trapping in this little section. So we're going to cage this bead in place as well and make sure this loop stays in place by trapping in the beginning part of the row here. So we now have this place. We're sitting in place like this. And what we need, obviously, like I said, it's going to be a little bit fiddly, but just try and keep it in place. So I place it where I want to, and then I hold on to it with my fingers like this. And then the cord, the holding cord, is at the front there. The working cord is coming from behind. We need to just do another vertical lax head knot. So just the same kind of knot, but I'm just doing this with my hands like this. Bring it over first, the holding cord, back around and through. All the cord, bring that through. And then when we're tightening this, we need to just do it carefully so it falls in the right place. Because we want this to be tightened so the cords are lying right in between that second and third bead, just like that. And make sure that that loose bead that we added at the very last one stays on this side where all the others are. So that's the 1/2. Now we need to go under, around and through. So it's just another vertical lax head knot, but we're just kind of doing it in the air now rather than having this tightened down to the board. So just like this, now that's in place. So that's the first loop that we've made here. So now we need to move on to create the next part of the knot here. So I'm going to put it back on my board, so place my pins back in as well, just to get it more secure so it's easier to work with. And I'm not really going through anything, I'm just going inside the loop here to kind of keep it in place all around, just so it stays in place while we're working with it. So we're creating the next row here. So to do that, what we need to do is basically continue what we've already done. Now we just made the first loop, so now we continue underneath where we just kind of connected them together. So we already have that first knot where we connected them. So the first thing we need to do now is put a bead onto the holding cord. So put it on and let it drop all the way down, just like that. And then we just continue with a vertical lax head knot. So use the working cord, go over, around, and pull all the way through. And then tighten that. So it just looks like we're continuing the row, but we've just connected the 2 ends there to keep it nice and secure. And then go under, around and through to make it one full knot. Just like this. And also every time you're tightening your knots, I just want to mention that you need to hold your holding cord nice and taut. You don't need to pull on it, but just make sure it's held taut like this so you can tighten your knots properly. And then you want to continue doing this. On this side, what we need is now a row of 11 beads. So that's the one I've just added, and then I need another 10 where we cage them in. So I've now added my 11 beads in total here and caged them all in, but what we need is 12. So like before, the very last one, I'm going to leave loose, so I'm just placing that on the cord now, the holding cord, and leaving it loose at the end. And then we're just going to take this off the board again, because then we need to shape this length that we've just done with these beads. So we have the 12 in total. We need to shape this around and then come through the bottom here, or the side of the first loop that we made. And what we need to do is count from the connection point here, just below that, we need to count 11 beads down, sorry, 6 beads down, not 11. We have 11 on here, and we need to count 6 beads down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then in between the 6th and the 7th is where this needs to lie. So like this. So again, I'm going to pick it up, keep hold of that. Make sure that the holding cord is coming in front, and then the working cord is coming from behind. But now obviously, because we have this loop, we need to just make sure the working cord is coming up through the loop to be able to make our knot. So just put it up through and then pull it all the way out like that. Keep hold of it like I said. So that last bead is now going to get caged in once we connect them as well. Keep hold of it and then take your working cord over, around and through your holding cord, and then tighten it. Make sure you tighten it so the cords end up in the right place in between the 2 beads there, so the 6th and the 7th one. And then we need to go under, around and through. So it can be a little bit fiddly this part, we have to connect them because you're kind of just holding the whole thing, but it will definitely work. If you find it easier to pin it in and work with it that way, that's fine. I prefer just kind of having the control in this way. So now that's connected with one full vertical lax head knot there. So we'll turn it this way. We have now a pretty good part of the Celtic knot. So now we need to continue again to create the next part of it. So I always like to have kind of the direction my row is going facing downwards, because that's what I'm going to be working with it. So just sort all your cords out, get the ones you're not using out of the way, and then I'm going to pin it back in again. So my working cord and holding cord there are just facing downwards, so it's nice and easy to work with. So that's the direction I'm going to be making my knots and adding my beads. So pin it back in just to make it easy to work with. Just like that. And then we're just going to basically keep repeating this. So now I need to add another few beads this section, because we need a row to come up here now and connect to the other side of this loop. And what we need is 6 beads in total here. So just add them in the same way. Add your bead now and cage them in. But obviously remember, we just need 5 beads to caged in, and the last one you leave loose, because then it gets caged in when we connect them. So now I've added my 6 beads here with the last one still loose. Then we need to connect it again. So take all the pins out. And then what we need to do is, if you're looking at it from this angle, what we're looking at where to connect it, this is coming downwards to the other side of the original first loop that we made, from where it's coming from. And then I'm looking at the very first connection that we did. In this case, what we need is, from that connection, count 3 beads towards where this needs to be connected. So 3 beads in between basically. So from there, it's 1, 2, 3, and then in between the 3rd and the 4th one, line just like that. So pick it up, keep hold of that loose bead on the right side, and then we just need to, the holding cord is coming above just like the other times. The working cord, we just need to poke that down through first, because that needs to come around the back. So down through, and then behind that same place, like that. And then we make another vertical lax head knot to cage it in by going over, around and through. Tighten it, make sure it's the cords are sitting in the right place, just like that, and then under, around and through. And then tighten the second half, just like that. So that is now the second loop completed. As you can see, we got the first one and then we got the second one there. So now we need to move on to the last one. So the very first thing that we need to do, if I just turn this around so it's faced in the way that it's actually going to be hanging. So the loop that we just completed, the second one, that's going to kind of be the middle one, the one that hangs lowest. If I show you on the earrings that I already made, it's going to sit like this. So this was the first loop that we made. That was this one. We then moved on to the second one. That's the middle one here. And now what we need to do is have a little connection up there. So we're not making the full third one yet. We're right at this place, which is right basically in the middle there. We need to make a little connection to move over to this very beginning part. So what we need to have in between there is 3 beads. So we get it back in position, I turn it around to work in the direction that it's naturally coming. So downwards like this, and then I just pin it back in. And then like I said, in this next section we need to have 3 beads in total. So I'm adding the first one there. So that means you need to cage in 2 and leave the third one loose, just like all the other times. We're just doing the same things over and over again. We're just basically alternating how many beads we're doing per section before we need to connect, because that obviously depends on where in the knot that we are. So just do 2 caged in beads in this section and then leave a loose one. So I now have my 3 beads there where the last one is loose. So again, same thing, I take it off the board just to be able to manage it better. And then we need this to come around to basically the very first bead that we added. And it needs to come right before that bead, so it's actually not going in between any beads. It's just going on top of the couple of knots you made at the beginning, right before the very first one. So that's why I want to add this one. Again, take your holding cord, place it over, and then the working cord goes under, cage it in place, connect it by going over, around and through, and then tighten it, making sure it stays where you need it to sit, like that, and then under, around and through. And then tighten, and then that's locked in place, connected there with your vertical lark's head knot. So there we go. Now you can see we have that little connection that was right up here. So now we need to do the biggest part here of the final loop. So for that, I've again added my piece onto my board here with my pins, make it easier to work with. We do the same thing, start the new row here, add the first bead, cage it in, and then in this section what we need is a total of 8 beads. So that means you need to cage in 7 like this, and then the last 8th one you leave loose, because then we need to connect this down to the bottom of that second loop. So now that I have my 8 beads on this section where the last one is loose, then we need to connect this one, and what we need to do is have this come around. So again, just shape it into place, and then you can slowly start to see now it looks a lot more like a finished piece. So if we look at this where we're at, this is the section that we're making now. So what we need to do is connect this down here, and what we need to do is look at basically the very first section where we connected them and count down from that. And what we need to do is count down 3 beads. So 1, 2, 3, and that's where you need to connect this in between the 3rd and the 4th one. So keep hold of it, pick it up. The holding cord is coming in front, and the working cord is right now facing towards the back here, so we just need to have it come up in between the loop there and pull it through so we can make our knot and cage it in. Again, the same knot, the vertical lark's head knot. Keep hold of it while you're making it, and then tighten it, making sure that it stays where you want it to, so that you tighten the knot in the right place, in between the right beads there, just like this. And then the second half of it, to make it nice and secure, we'll go under there, and then tighten it for the full knot, just like that, and you can really start to see it forming now. So now what we need to do is connect from this point into the very middle in there. And for this, obviously I'm going to turn it around just like the other times. So get it in the right place so it's facing downwards like that. Pin it back on. And then on this section what we need is 3 beads to reach that row, so we can connect them. So again, add your very first bead to your holding cord, cage in, and then do that with 2, and then the third one we leave loose, and then we need to connect it down there. So now that I have those 3 beads with the last one loose, we need to connect that, and what we need to connect it to is this line basically underneath everything. So if we look at the finished one, it's this point right in the middle we need to connect. So what we have, if we count the beads that we have in this section between the 2 connections that's already there, we have 6 beads in total, which means we need to come right in the middle of that. So if you count 3 beads from either side, it doesn't matter really. So right in the middle there, keep hold of it, make sure that that loose bead is on the right side. And then this now, the working cord needs to come first down in that opening here to get out on the other side, so we can end up going behind whereas the holding cord is coming in front. And then also it needs to come up in the next one here. So just like this, move it across so it sits correctly, and then do the vertical lark's head knot just like the other times, while you keep hold of the piece together there. Tighten it and then go under, around and through, just like this, and then tighten that, and then that sits nice and securely in place as well. So now we need to continue up to the next part, where we also need to add 3 beads to the holding cord with the last one loose. So basically just like we just did, so pin it back in, cage in your 2 beads first, and then leave the third one loose, and then we'll connect it in the next point. Once we added those 3 beads, we need to connect this section as well, and this needs to be connected to this section here. So this row of beads going across, and what we have a connection here and a connection there, and in between there's 6 beads in total. And again, just like before, we need to go right slap bang in the middle of that. So that means from either side you can count 3 beads, and make sure, keep hold of that. The holding cord lies above. Again, we need to just push that working cord down first through the loop where it's basically sitting already, and then come up the other side here, just so we can make the knot to basically connect it in place. Bring it around the back. Again, make your vertical lark's head knot. Tighten it. Keep your holding cord taut, just like when you're making the knots otherwise, when you're adding your beads. Like that. So you go over first, around and through. Now we go under, around and through. And tighten that. So that is now in place. So you can see we're almost done. It's really starting to look like something now. We just have that last little section left. That's right up here. And what we need here is only 2 beads. So if you can look, you kind of put a line down the middle. The 2 sides need to be mirrored. And that's how you get this kind of symmetrical look. Over on this side is this very section right there. So basically the first 2 beads that we put on right at the beginning, that's the ones on this side, and those are the ones we need to add to this side now. So the very first 2 are going to be the same as the very last 2. So therefore we need to add 2 here. So that means cage in the very first one and leave the second one loose to then connect it right up at the very last place. So there we go. I have my 1 bead that's caged in, and then the 1 loose, and then the last place we have to connect it, you can always take it off and just have a look at it to make sure you get it symmetrical. So on this side that's already done, you can count how many beads are in between, so where you need to connect it. So look at the very middle point here where that crossover is, count between that and then where that section with the 2 comes, and that's 3 beads. So from the middle here to the other side we need to count out 3 beads as well. So that's 1, 2, 3. So I know it needs to lie right between the 3rd and the 4th one. And again we need to just take the working cord down in between, pull it all the way through to come to the other side here, and then make the vertical lax head knot. Go over, around and through while you keep hold of it. Tighten that in the right place, just like that, and then finish it by going under, around and through. So just like this, keep your holding cord taut and then tighten that knot in place. So there we go. And that is basically the whole beaded part done. So the Celtic knot part of the design, it looks like this. And don't worry if throughout your loops here are kind of out of shape and it looks a bit weird or wonky. Right at the end here when we're done, we can always just adjust it. If a loop, say if that was a little bit flat, you just gently pull it out. And then once you've done that, it will stay in place and it'll hold its shape nicely like this. And you can see the symmetry in the piece as well. So now that we have reached this point, the main part is done here. What there's left to do is make the rest of the necklace. So that's what I'm going to use the rest of my long lengths for. Because we started with such long lengths, we still have a decent length left on each side to be able to make whatever kind of chain that you want, still using the cords. But if you wanted to make the earrings, have a look at this. I still use these, but like I said, you don't need to have them nearly as long. Just make sure you have a bit extra length on each side here. On this, I continued using the vertical lax head knot the same way, just without adding in beads. Did the same amount on each side and then brought them together here in the middle. I then added one of my kumihimo endings there and added it to an earring finding with a jump ring. So that's all there was to that. Nice and simple. You just bring them together there in the middle. Now as for the necklace, I'm also going to be using these cords that I have left, but I want it to be just a little bit different. So first now, I'm just going to undo these temporary knots that I said in the beginning, just to help keep the work in place. So we basically now have the same on both sides here, and what I'm just going to do is obviously start with one side at a time. So just choose one side to start working with, and what I want to do is actually use a bit of a different knot in this. You can continue using the same one just like I did in the earrings, that's completely up to you, personal choice, but I just want to make it a little bit different. So again, like I said, start with one side, put the others out of the way so they don't get in the way while you're working with them. And then I'm just going to pin it back in to make it easy to work with, just so it's nice and secure here and doesn't move around too much, because that does make it more difficult to work with when it does that. So like this. So we have our cords here, right from the beginning part. And then what I want to start doing now, the knot I want to use is the alternating half hitch. So in this case, with that knot, the cords basically switch jobs the whole time. So the working cord and the holding cord will keep swapping over which one's which. So you just start with one side, it doesn't matter, because we'll keep swapping places anyway, swapping sides. I'm just going to start putting the left one over the right one, back around, and through the loop. So on this side, you're getting a normal 6. Tighten that down all the way. Then do the opposite. So take my right side over, back around and through. On this side you get your reverse 6 looping around the holding cord. Tighten that. Again the left side over, around and through. And tighten. Get your normal 6 there. And then the right side over, around and through. And you get your reverse 6. And as you can see, I just keep swapping hands basically, so the cord keeps swapping jobs from being a holding cord to a working cord, holding cord and working cord. Normal 6. And you can easily do the other knot, like I said, it's just personal choice. I thought this would give a bit more interest, because you get a really nice effect with that. Once you've done a bit more, you can see what it looks like. So just keep doing this on the one side for as long as you need it to, or until you used up your cords. And then do the same on the other side, the exact same technique. Make sure both sides are the same length, and then we need to finish off the ends. So I've now finished making all my knots here on both sides, so you can see here, and this is what I've ended up with. So decent length. You can obviously make these as long as you want to, and I've just made sure that they're both the same length. What I like to do as well when I do this knot is just, when I'm done, stretch it out, just also so you make sure that they are the same length by doing this, and it just kind of settles the knots with each other. So just do this along both of them, and then what we need to do now is finish off the ends up here. And what I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to use these kumihimo ends, but obviously right now this is a bit small to fit inside. There's going to be quite a bit of space left inside that end. So what I want to do is just tie a knot or two on this end, and it's going to fit inside much better. So just a regular overhand knot, and just tighten it down right at the end of your knots there. And then one, I can see, definitely won't be enough, so I'm going to do another one and make sure it lies on top of the previous one to basically bulk it up a little bit, just to give it space to fill out that kumihimo end. So like this, make sure that it lies on top of the other one. Tighten it, and then you can always check it. It's definitely better now. And then if it's done, you can finish there. If it's good size, so you can do a third one if you need to. I'm just going to do a third one on top of that as well, just to make sure it sits nicely inside there. Just like that. Now it's going to fit perfectly just inside that kumihimo end and look nice and neat. And now what I'm going to do is put some glue in here, cut off the excess cord that we're done using, and then obviously finish off with the kumihimo ends. I've already got a video that shows how to do that, so I'm going to put a link to that in the description box. You can show that in detail, but I'm going to use glue like I said, then attach both ends of the kumihimo ends there with jump rings and attach my clasp. And once you've done that, then your necklace will be done. So now I've added my kumihimo ends here to the ends and attached my clasp as well, an extended chain, and then the necklace is done. And then it looks like this. So all one piece, it's all connected with kind of the focal piece and then the chains running up the side. So it looks like this. So you can obviously make this necklace, or you can make the earrings that I've showed you as well. You can obviously make them match as well, so you kind of have a set out of them. I just wanted to make two different styles, but just to show you as well, I'm using rondelles on this and then rounds on these, so you can use different types of beads. So that's how you make this. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello everyone. Today I want to show you how to make these Celtic knot wirework earrings, and they look like this. So quite simple, they have a nice dangle to them, and just because of the gemstone that I added there, it also gives a bit of colour, but you have this nice effect. But they're quite simple and easy to make, so if you want to learn how to make these, then keep watching. So these are the few things that we'll need to make these earrings. Now here I have my wire, and this is a